In 2001, a panel of researchers at the National Eye Institute sat staring at a problem they didn't expect to have. They had just finished one of the largest eye studies in American history. 5 years of data, over 4,000 patients, a specific cocktail of vitamins and minerals had cut the risk of progressing to advanced age-related macular degeneration by about 25%. They were ready to recommend the formula to millions of aging Americans. But there was something inside that formula that had quietly become a problem. Beta-carotene, the orange pigment that gives carrots their color. A separate clinical trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, had found that high-dose beta-carotene supplements increased the risk of lung cancer in current and former smokers. So, the formula that was protecting people's eyes was unsafe for tens of millions of Americans who had ever smoked. The scientists faced a choice. They could quietly attach a warning label and ship it. Or they could go back into the laboratory, redesign the formula from scratch, and run the entire multi-year, multi-million-dollar trial all over again. They chose to run it again. The new study was called AREDS 2. It enrolled 4,203 participants across 82 clinical sites in the United States. It ran from 2006 to 2012. And the question it answered changed what we know about how the human eye protects itself from going dark. The substance they put in to replace beta-carotene? 2 pigments that most people watching this video have probably never heard of by name. 2 pigments your great-grandparents got every day from food without thinking about it. And 2 pigments that almost no modern American breakfast contains. Today, I'm going to walk you through what those pigments do, why your morning routine is almost certainly destroying your ability to absorb them, and a 15-second adjustment costing under $1 a day that gets them where your eyes actually need them. We're going to look at the actual studies, the actual timelines, and the actual limits of what nutrition can do for the aging eye. Because the truth here is more useful than the hype. This is Oracle Prime. Part 1. What's actually happening inside your eye right now? Look at any object in this video. The thing you're seeing it with, the part of your eye doing the actual sharp, detailed work, is a patch of tissue at the back of your eye smaller than the head of a pencil eraser. It's called the macula. And specifically, the very center of it is called the fovea. The macula contains the densest concentration of cone photoreceptors anywhere in your body. Every time you read a license plate, recognize a grandchild's face across a room, or thread a needle, you are using this tiny patch of tissue. It does the work that your peripheral vision simply cannot. Here's the catch. Because the macula handles the highest resolution work, it absorbs the most concentrated focused light. And concentrated light is metabolically violent. Photons strike the photoreceptors. Free radicals are generated as a byproduct. Oxidative damage accumulates with every minute of every day. If nothing intervened, the macula would burn itself out long before you reached middle age. Something does intervene. The macula has a built-in optical filter, a yellow pigmented layer that sits in front of the photoreceptors and absorbs short-wavelength, high-energy light before it reaches them. That filter is made of 3 carotenoids, lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. They function as both a physical sunscreen and as antioxidants, neutralizing the free radicals produced by light exposure. Carotenoids are the plant pigments that give carrots their orange, kale its dark green, marigolds their yellow, and egg yolks their golden color. Your body cannot synthesize lutein or zeaxanthin from scratch. You have to eat them. Every single molecule of macular pigment in your eye right now arrived through your mouth at some point in your life. When the density of that pigment drops, measured in clinics as macular pigment optical density, or MPOD, the macula loses its protective filter. Light hits the photoreceptors harder than they were ever designed to handle. Oxidative damage outpaces cellular repair. Cells start dying. The first thing that goes is fine detail, then color contrast, then in some people, central vision itself collapses. This is age-related macular degeneration. And once a photoreceptor dies, it does not regenerate. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control's most recent estimate, published in JAMA Ophthalmology in 2022, approximately 19.8 million Americans aged 40 and older are living with some stage of AMD. About 1.5 million are at the late vision-threatening stage. The disease is the leading cause of irreversible vision loss in adults over 60 in industrialized countries. Is what your great-grandparents had that you don't. Part 2. Why no one is selling you this information. Here is where most channels reach for a villain. There isn't one. The actual story is more interesting than that. Lutein and zeaxanthin are natural compounds found in egg yolks, kale, spinach, sweet corn, peppers, and dozens of other foods. You cannot patent a compound that grows in the dirt. You cannot trademark an egg yolk. That single fact decides almost everything that follows. Even one with modest benefits gets a marketing budget of tens of millions of dollars, a sales force, conference sponsorships, free samples, and physician education programs. A natural pigment in a leafy green gets none of that. There is no recurring revenue model. No corporation has the financial incentive to teach 70 million American baby boomers about macular pigment on primetime television. That is why the AREDS and AREDS 2 trials had to be funded by the National Eye Institute, a branch of the U.S. government, rather than by a pharmaceutical company. It is not because anyone buried the data. The data is open. Every paper is on PubMed. The protocols are public. The reason most people have never heard of macular pigment is structural. No one stood to make money explaining it on television. The same logic applies inside the doctor's office. Your ophthalmologist has 15 minutes to dilate your pupils, examine your retinas, document findings, and bill insurance. They are not paid to walk you through the bioavailability of dietary carotenoids and the role of dietary fat in nutrient absorption. That isn't a conspiracy. That's a billing code and an appointment slot. The result is that most people over 60 are walking around with a macula that is slowly losing its protective layer. And no one has ever told them they had a protective layer to begin with. Part 3. The real reason most lutein supplements don't work. In 2004, a team of researchers at the Jean Mayer USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts University in Boston ran a careful experiment. 10 healthy men, 4 different sources of lutein taken in random order, with a 2-week washout period between each phase. Every source delivered 6 milligrams of lutein per daily dose. The 4 sources were a free lutein supplement, a lutein ester supplement, cooked spinach, and an egg from chickens that had been fed marigold petals to enrich the yolk's lutein content. Blood samples were taken at baseline and over 9 days of consumption. The findings were published in the Journal of Nutrition. The egg group's blood lutein levels rose roughly 3 times higher than the supplement and spinach groups. Same dose, 3 times the absorption. Why? The answer is simple chemistry. Lutein is fat-soluble. To be absorbed in the small intestine, it has to dissolve into a fat carrier. Micelles formed from dietary fat, bile salts, and emulsifiers. The egg yolk delivered the lutein already wrapped in dietary fat, phospholipids, lecithin, cholesterol. The fat-free supplement and the dry spinach did not. The body absorbs only what it can carry, and there is no carrier in dry pills swallowed with water. This is the part where modern morning routines fail entirely. A typical American adult wakes up, drinks black coffee, and swallows a multivitamin or a lutein capsule with water or with that same coffee. There is no fat in coffee. There is no fat in water. There is essentially no fat anywhere in that breakfast. The lutein passes through the digestive tract and exits the body without ever being absorbed in any meaningful quantity. It is not that coffee blocks anything. Coffee is not a villain. The issue is simply that without dietary fat present at the same time, a fat-soluble nutrient has no way to enter the bloodstream. You can buy the most expensive lutein supplement on the shelf, and if you swallow it dry, most of it ends up in your toilet rather than in your eye. That is the problem. The fix takes about 15 seconds. Part 4. The 15-second morning adjustment. Here is the protocol, with the safer option as the primary recommendation. You will need 3 things: a blender or a small handheld milk frother, your morning coffee, and a fat carrier. For the fat carrier, you have 2 solid choices. The first is 1 teaspoon of MCT oil. MCT stands for medium-chain triglycerides, fats with shorter carbon chains than the long-chain fats you find in butter or olive oil. MCTs digest faster than other fats, route directly to the liver where they are quickly converted to energy, and act as an effective solvent for fat-soluble compounds like lutein. The second is 1 teaspoon of unrefined virgin coconut oil. Coconut oil is roughly 60% medium-chain fats, with the remainder being slightly longer chains. It works well as a carrier, though MCT oil is more concentrated for this specific purpose. Pick whichever your gut tolerates better, and which is easier to keep in your kitchen. To either of these, you add a standardized supplement, 10 milligrams of lutein and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin. This is the exact ratio used in the AREDS-2 trial. Look for those specific numbers on any supplement label. Most reputable brands list them clearly, and the formulation is widely available. You'll often see it labeled simply as an AREDS-2 formula. Pour the hot coffee into a blender or a wide jar. Add the teaspoon of oil. Empty the lutein and zeaxanthin capsule contents into the coffee. Or, if you prefer, simply swallow the capsule whole as you take the first sip. Blend or froth the mixture for 15 seconds. The fat breaks into microscopic droplets distributed evenly throughout the liquid, ready to carry the carotenoids across your intestinal wall. Drink it within the first hour of waking, before any other meal. That is the protocol. Total cost, depending on supplement brand and oil quality, runs roughly 70 cents to $1 per day. A note on eggs, because I know some of you are about to ask. Whole eggs are an excellent dietary source of lutein, but raw eggs are not safe, particularly for adults over 60. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration explicitly warns that older adults are among the highest risk groups for severe salmonella illness, which in this population can spread from the intestines to the bloodstream and become life-threatening. Hot coffee does not pasteurize a raw egg. That requires sustained temperature over time, which a blended drink does not provide. If you want to use eggs as your lutein source, eat them properly cooked, soft-boiled, scrambled, or poached until the yolk is firm, alongside your morning coffee, not blended into it raw. The fat from a cooked yolk still functions perfectly well as an absorption carrier. A note on MCT tolerance. Because MCT oil bypasses much of the slow digestive path and routes quickly to the liver, the same speed that makes it effective as a carrier can cause stomach cramping, nausea, or sudden urgent diarrhea if you take too much too soon. Start with a quarter teaspoon for the first 3 days. Build up by a quarter teaspoon every few days until you reach a full teaspoon. If your gut complains at any point, drop back to the previous dose and stay there longer. There is no advantage to rushing. Part 5. An honest timeline of what actually changes. This is where I want to be careful with you, because the timeline matters more than most people realize when they start a protocol like this. In the first 3 weeks, the changes are biochemical, not visual. Studies measuring serum lutein concentrations have consistently shown that with daily supplementation in the AREDS-2 dose range, blood lutein can rise several-fold within the first 2 to 3 weeks of consistent intake. An older study published in Investigative Ophthalmology and Visual Science in 2006 documented a roughly 9-fold rise at higher doses. More recent studies at the standard 10 milligram dose show 3 to 7-fold increases over 12 weeks. What these studies do not show is a corresponding overnight change in your vision. You are loading the supply line. You are not yet seeing it on the screen. Around the 3-month mark, 12 weeks in, something measurable starts happening at the macula itself. A 2011 randomized clinical trial published in IOVS, conducted at the Medical University of Vienna, gave AMD patients 10 to 20 milligrams of lutein daily for 6 months. The result was a statistically significant 28% increase in macular pigment optical density measured against placebo. The pigment is physically thickening. The internal filter is rebuilding. Some patients in this and similar trials reported subtle improvements in contrast sensitivity and recovery from glare, though large jumps in visual acuity were inconsistent and modest where they occurred. You are in the territory where AREDS2 itself was measured. The trial followed participants for 5 years. In that population, adults already at high risk for advanced AMD, the subgroup of participants who had the lowest baseline dietary intake of lutein and zeaxanthin saw a 26% reduction in progression to advanced AMD when supplementation was added. According to the National Eye Institute, that benefit was specifically observed in people who weren't getting these nutrients from their diet, a group that describes most modern Western adults eating standard processed food diets. So here is the realistic timeline. 3 weeks, blood levels up. 3 months, pigment density measurably thickening. 5 years, meaningful reduction in disease progression for those at risk. This is not an overnight cure. Nothing is. It is a slow, deliberate rebuild of a defense system that took decades of poor absorption to lose in the first place. If you came here looking for instant visual restoration, this isn't that. But if you came here looking for a daily habit that the largest government-funded eye study in American history actually validated as one of the few interventions that meaningfully slows the leading cause of irreversible blindness, this is exactly that. Part 6. Where this protocol cannot help you. Survival knowledge is only useful if you understand its limits. Here are the limits. This protocol does not reverse vision loss that has already happened. Photoreceptor cells that have died do not regenerate. If your central vision has already been destroyed by advanced AMD, lutein and zeaxanthin will not bring it back. They may slow further loss in the eye that is still functioning. That is the realistic ceiling. And any source telling you otherwise is selling something. This protocol does not treat wet AMD, the more aggressive form where abnormal blood vessels grow under the retina and leak fluid or blood. Wet AMD is treated with a class of medications called anti-VEGF injections, which include ranibizumab, aflibercept, and bevacizumab, administered directly into the eye by a retinal specialist. These injections, available since the mid-2000s, have meaningfully reduced legal blindness from AMD over the past 2 decades. They are one of the genuine wins of modern ophthalmology. If you have wet AMD, no morning protocol replaces them. This protocol does not address other major causes of vision loss in older adults: cataracts, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, or retinal detachment. Each of these is a different disease with a completely different treatment path. If your vision has been changing in any noticeable way, the most important thing you can do is not start a smoothie. It is book a dilated eye exam with an ophthalmologist. Sudden vision loss, distortion of straight lines, new central blind spots, flashes of light, or floaters appearing for the first time are not just aging. They are reasons to be in a clinic the same week, or in the case of sudden loss, the same day. A few cautions on the protocol itself. People with gallbladder disease should not start MCT oil without consulting a physician. The rapid fat delivery can trigger pain in those with gallstones or impaired bile flow. People taking blood thinners or medications for liver disease should also clear it first. Pregnant or breastfeeding women should follow whatever supplement guidance their obstetrician provides, not a video on the internet. And smokers, current or former. Should be aware that AREDS 2 specifically removed beta-carotene because of the lung cancer risk demonstrated in earlier trials, but should still consult their doctor before adding any new supplement. None of this is a reason to do nothing. It is a reason to do this with eyes open. Part 7. The choice you have tomorrow morning. Go back to those scientists at the National Eye Institute in 2001. They had a formula that worked. They could have shipped it with a warning label and walked away. They chose instead to admit it had a problem and run the entire study over again. It took them an additional 11 years. What came out of those 11 years was a piece of practical knowledge that almost nobody outside ophthalmology has ever heard. The macula has a defense system. The defense system is built from food. Without dietary fat present at the time of consumption, the food doesn't reach it. With 15 seconds of blending and about $1 a day, you can put it where it actually needs to go. That is not a hidden secret. That is just how the biology works. The reason it does not get talked about is structural. A leafy green has no advertising budget. And the reason it does work is biochemistry that nobody can patent or hide. Photons hit photoreceptors. Carotenoids absorb the worst of the damage. The stack of macular pigment thickens with consistent intake plus dietary fat. The aging eye gets a few more years of clean, sharp vision than it would have had otherwise. You do not have to wait for someone to come and rescue your eyesight. The biology is sitting in your refrigerator and a $10 supplement bottle. The only thing missing is the 15 seconds and the decision to use them. If this changed how you think about your morning routine, hit subscribe. That is how this channel keeps doing this kind of research. Share this video with anyone over 50 who has been writing off their fading vision as just getting older. And tell me in the comments below, what is one habit you have been doing every morning for years that you now realize you might want to rethink? I read every comment, and your answers shape the next investigation. This is Oracle Prime. Until next time, keep questioning, keep testing, and keep your eyes on the long game.